Hey, hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here longer. After doing YouTube for about over a half a year consistently now, the question I get asked the most is, how do you render? To which my answer is complicated to say the least, but I've been drawing for over 5 years now at this point, and my rendering has changed a lot over the course of this time period. And I really mean it when I say a lot of you are curious as to how my art process looks like. So I decided to finally let you all know my secrets. I did go a little bit into detail in one of my other vids, but let's be real, that one doesn't have the best quality, and I decided with a proper film editing software now that I can finally share it in more detail, with a better quality as well. I'm not that good at tutorials or anything, so I'm very sorry if this might be hard to follow or understand. Very sorry once again. So, sit down, get comfortable, and watch as I teach you the magic of rendering. I'd just like to say that I'm not a professional artist by any means, this is simply how I draw. And with that being said, let's get into the video. For this tutorial, I will be drawing this Flandre Scarlet from Toho 6 because I'm so incredibly hyperfixated in Toho, somebody needs to know about it. And the brush I'm using is this one if you're curious, but you gotta pay for it though, just saying if you want to have it. I decided to leave out me explaining how I sketch because let's be honest, it's hella boring, so I just wanted to quickly flash a time lapse on the screen before I get into the meat of this video. One thing I like doing is shading my sketch with gray and blocking in light with white. It helps me somewhat see what the final artwork will look like before I start to fill in my flat colors. I just use normal colors. I usually just eyeball them, but if it's very specific, picking the colors from a reference is a big help. Don't be afraid to use character reference sheets, by the way. Also, I'd like to note that I'm roughly coloring this in because this step doesn't really require as much detailed work as the actual rendering, so it's okay to color outside the lines because we will fix it later. If your flats are done, we can start with normal shading, or as I like to call it, pre-render shading. I just color pick the flats and shift the color wheel with a little bit of a darker color. There isn't much of a philosophy behind this. Also note, don't make the shadows too dark here and you will see later why. Move on to the part where it gets interesting. I merge all of the layers, except the background, into one. This might be a bit risky for some of you, but you can always just copy and hide your sketch underneath, so if you mess up, you have a backup sketch. Upon doing this, clip a multiply layer onto your character and or background. In my case, I just did it on the character. You can also do it on the background, there's no issue in that. And fill it in with either blue or purple, preferably more saturated. Here's it on the color wheel. Set it to multiply and to about 60 to 70%. For me, it's usually either 60 or 70, but whatever works for you, my precious viewer. Erase the parts moving forward to that are lit by your light source to intensify the shadows. This is why I mentioned that earlier, that you shouldn't use that much of a dark color doing your flats because it would be too intense and way too hard to make out. Trust me, I used to do this and I made all my shadows way too dark, to which my art looked kind of off. But as y'all know me, I can't draw anything with normal colors, so let's just start adding some colors. This is a new thing I recently started doing, so I'm still experimenting with it, and you can leave this out if you want to, but I copy and paste my character, clip it onto the multiply layer, and add a rainbow gradient map. This was something that came into my mind so randomly, and it's really fun to be honest with y'all. Lower the opacity to however you like it and set it to a blending mode if you want to. I use Pinlight for example. Now you might be thinking, but Sai, these colors, they look so weird and they don't make any sense. My dear precious viewer, I have the solution. Shifting the hues and the colors. This looks a little bit bleak, so let's just add some more layers above to make stuff more interesting. You can honestly add whatever more blending modes you want here. I just usually go with overlay underneath or above, depends on, to be honest, the drawing, plus adding normal layer above with an accent color of your choice. In my case, it's cyan. It's always cyan. Phew, that was a lot of layer modes to add, and now you're somewhat satisfied. Merge them all together. And before you do that, please consider merging them from the one at the bottom and not just randomly merging them all together because otherwise we may have varying results. And boom, you're ready to render if you made it this far. Honestly, my rendering is very monotonous since it's just refining my base until it looks good, so I won't go into detail much because let's be honest, it's not worth it, and having me repeat the word refine over and over and over again is not fun. Is important though is the eyes because I love drawing funky eyes with cool shapes. I love doing those eyeball white bottom lashes. I don't know if anyone else does these. You can use them to express a lot about the character you're drawing. It usually depends on the character for me. Is the character art going in loud? Give them spiky bottom lashes. Are they quiet and reserved? Give them round ones. The list goes on, but sometimes you can just play around with it. There's no set in stone rules for art. It's just all about having fun. I like to also blur the edges to give it more depth and use Gaussian blur wherever is necessary. Making it to the finish line finally, and by that I mean finishing your rendering. You're almost ready in terms of completing your artwork, but there's small details that can drastically improve here. I import my art into Procreate where I just start adjusting stuff like color and blur and adding some chromatic aberration and noise because it's a nice way to spice up your drawings, let's be real here. I also like to adjust whatever I missed previously with a similar brush, placing my signature wherever feels right and adding some eye shines and voila! Something feels like it can still use a bit of improvement, so let's fix that. I export this version of the art piece and import it into isnt. Yes, I use like 3 different drawing apps for my art. This is why I don't post speed paints this often. I learned a cool texture method a while ago where you duplicate your layer and go to pixelation, set it to crystallize, and dot hexagon for a cool screen tone-esque texture. Side note, sorry for this abysmal quality, I don't know what happened to my screen recorder here. Once I'm done doing that, I like to use a multi-line brush and add it onto the edges. I don't know why I do this, but it's fun, so I'm keeping it in. Okay, I promise this is the last step, okay? I send it to my phone where I tweak the colors on Ibis Paint again, and yes, we're finally done! And what do you think of the final result? Thank you a lot for sticking around to the end. I hope you learned something new today and had fun. This is my longest video to date, and honestly, I'd love to make more long-form content in the future, so consider subbing if you want to see more of me and my art in the near future. Until then, stay cool and keep drawing. Bye bye, guys!